Yo, 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 how's it going, my G's? I thought I'd do a very quick and concise video today about my thoughts on compression, particularly on your drum bus, and why I advocate mostly against it. Unless you really know what you're doing, I think you should, just think about it before you decide to put compression on your drums. Now, let's have a quick little look at what compression actually means and what it actually does before you start randomly applying it to your drum bus in the hopes that it's going to make everything fine and dandy. So you can see here what compression actually does. In music production, a compressor is an essential tool used to control the dynamic range of audio signals. It helps to even out the differences in volume between the loudest and the softest parts of a sound recording. Okay? So when you apply a compressor to a track, it reduces the level of the audio signal. So it brings it down when it exceeds a certain threshold. So, the compressor will decide, you decide where the threshold is and then when do we start bringing it down. By decreasing the dynamic range, so making it flatter, lower highs and higher lows, bringing it to the middle. A compressor can bring up softer sounds and reduce the prominence of louder sounds. This process is often used to make tracks sound more balanced and controlled. So it's taking the highs and lows and bringing it more to the middle. Okay. Compressors have various adjustable parameters such as threshold, ratio, attack, release, and makeup gain. You see these on all your compressors pretty much. The threshold determines at what level the compressor starts to reduce the volume. So the threshold is the main one that's controlling how much on and off of compression you're going to have. And ratio determines how much the level is reduced. So ratio is like, it's like how extreme is the threshold working. You can have it like a bit less, a bit softer, or a bit harder, But still, the threshold is the main one, Attack and release controls determine how quickly the compressor responds to changes in volume. So it's going to analyze the audio and then it's going to react to it, either really quickly or really slowly, And that's why sometimes in sidechaining, sometimes even the fast version is too slow for like a real proper precise sidechain. So you kick from your sub. So that's why we use volume automation so we can draw it in and it's faster. Makeup gain compensates for the overall volume reduction caused by compression. So a lot of the times you'll have like an auto gain, and what this will do is, you've done the compression and now it's going to think what it thinks that you need to turn it up by and auto gain everything again. I always have that off because that's like, it's deciding the volume for you when you want to decide that yourself. So I always switch the auto gain off. So lastly, compressors play a crucial role in music production by election, helping to shape the sound, improve clarity, and ensure that all elements of a mix work together effectively. When you use it on the right elements, it's not like you just throw it on everything and hope it works and everything is going to sound clearer and louder. It's using it in the specific parts of the song that need it and not using it in the specific parts of the song that don't need it. So this is where we get into the drums specifically. So here's a project I'm currently working on, collaboration with my mate Yatuza from Colombia. So don't resample our drums. But here's like the drum beat on its own. Let's talk about what would happen if I compressed it. So let's throw on like, what's a terrible compressor? The Logic one. So here's the Logic compressor, and you can see if I switch it on, it's going to start turning the song down, with the auto gain being off. So what's it turning down first? It's going to be turning down, the loud part of the drums, So it's going to be turning down the kick drum, okay? And the reason why I don't like to use this on a drum group is for the reason that this is my opinion, the kick drum is sort of the loudest, almost most important part of your track. In drum and bass, for me, I mix everything off of the kick drum. I think I've talked about this many times before, but the kick drum is at the sort of loudest part of the track, and then I'm mixing everything else around that. So what happens if I put on a compressor onto the drum bus, what it's going to do is it's taking down the volume of the kick, and it's going to bring up the other details, you know. So, but overall, the kick is coming down. Okay, so yeah, like you might sort of make it louder, but at what cost? Okay, so instead, what I like to do is put on some saturation. So if I use a saturation instead of compression, here I've got one which is multi-band. This is important for me because I don't want to turn the kick drum. I don't want to distort the low end of the kick drum because it's kind of a sine wave. So like you can quickly destroy the kind of power of it by over distorting it. That's why I like to use a multi-band saturation like this one, Wings Fire, or you could use Trash, or don't really like how Saturn sounds, but you could use that as well. But basically, here I can really drive up the details in the whole drum group, specifically in the high end, and leave that kick drum, you know, still clean and not over distorted. But the important thing is, by doing that, I'm able to bring up the lower parts in the drums that you might want louder, you know, the details, like the compressor it does, you know, because the compressor, it brings down the top parts, but it also brings up the low parts, yeah? And the cool thing that you might think is great about the compressor is the way that it will sort of balance it out and bring up the low parts, yeah, to make it sound like more energetic. But if you do it this way, you can leave your kick up at the highest point, so the compressor's not bringing down the kick, and then you can still bring up the details in the high end and things like that. So that's why I prefer to do this rather than compress the drums, because like you know, that will bring down the volume of the kick, yeah? And there's no point in bringing it down, because you want to have that, in my opinion, for drum and bass at least, you want that to be like really as loud as it can go, and then like bass your mix down around that. So you're avoiding the, you know, weakening the kick, in my opinion, when you leave your compressor off and don't bother to compress on the whole drum group. Yeah, the only one time I would advise that you could use one is if you're using a compressor which is actually, you're doing it for the purpose of like using sort of some analog emulation to try and get some more kind of boost into the sound. Like, for example, I did this little reel recently on Instagram and on YouTube, whatever, on one of my favorite mastering ones, which I can't find now. Oh, the Shadow Hills Class A mastering compressor. Yeah. Which is, if I put it on the mastering loud mode, which I like. Okay, this one is like, is actually making it even louder than it was before, but it's not really compressing it, because what I showed you before was what a compressor does. You know, when you're actually using a compressor for what it's supposed to be used for, you know, it's taking that loud part down and then, you know, bringing the low parts up. But this one is basically, you can see I've got the mix up at 100%. It's not really any compression happening. I'm just using it because I don't know what the specific setup is of the preset, the mastering loud preset, but there's loads of obviously parameters you can mess with. But it's the way that it gains the sound up, and some of the, I don't know the specific, I've played around with it before, but I couldn't tell you off by heart which specific parameters are the best ones that are giving it this analog warmth, yeah? But on a whole, what it's doing is it's adding like its own algorithm to give like warmth and extra boost and almost add some new harmonics to the sound, yeah? So it's not really behaving like a normal compressor. So that's the only reason that I would say use a compressor on the drums, because it's not actually really being a compressor. It's just using like the kind of saturation or, you know, the analog emulation content of the plugin. It's not actually like doing proper compression on the sound, you know? So that's when you can use a compressor, is when it's like really a coloring tool. So that's when I would use that on the drums. But often, to be fair, like I don't really bother even using that. I'll just literally use a bit of saturation, yeah? And the kick drum, like I said, you know, that's the high point of the track, you know, and it's nice and clean. It's loud, but it's clean. And then the way you mix everything else around the kick is how you get your mix down to be loud, punchy, crispy, clean, and everything dynamic, impactful, and everything you want. It's having that kick loud and clean and right up there, and then doing everything else around it properly. That's what you want to do, in my opinion, to get a really nice dynamic mix. And yeah, so don't bother compressing your whole drum group unless you want to, you know, take down the loud part, which is the kick. Like if you want it to be quieter, then you can, of course, if you're doing something a bit different. You know, if you're mixing it in a way where the kick drum's not the focus point, then you can go ahead and do that, you know. But for most of us, like, you want to make bangers like me, on that kick drum nice and slamming, nice and hard, and right up there. And so for that reason, I wouldn't compress the drum group, because it's just going to turn it down, and that defeats the object for me, because it's the loudest part of the track. So anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Again, this is just my advice, my opinions, but I found from my experience of producing for like 10 years or so that this is a better approach to use saturation and things like that, and use compression in the classic sense on the sounds that you don't want to be like the top of the spectrum, the top of the volume chart, you know. Kick drum's definitely at the top for me, so it makes no sense to add any compression to it. I'll compress a lot of other things, cymbals, some background sounds, like loads of other stuff. I'm not knocking compressors. I'm just saying I wouldn't do it on the group that has the loudest sound in the track, essentially. Okay, so that's my opinion. And yeah, if you like the content, make sure you like and subscribe, and hit the bell button as well if you want to catch my live streams, because I do a lot of live streams, like maybe one a week on average, something like that. But I don't plan them. I just I do it when I'm sort of just in the mood and I'm feeling it. I'll just like jump on and go live within like the 5 minutes of deciding to do it. So if you hit the bell, then you'll see like when I go live, because I really don't ever plan them. But they're a lot of fun, and I engage with all of the audience like all the time. We have chats back and forth. You can Q&A, ask me about my day, ask me about what my favorite flavor of chocolate is, and all this stuff. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Peace out. Much love. Ciao.